Today, we go back in the past to bring ourselves into the future. Our ancestors knew something we didn't. They made ornate, beautiful pieces of artwork. They called them dream catchers. We now follow in their footsteps as we make these coils out of wire. We're understanding them different. We look at them now as energy. Have we now awakened to our true calling? Energy, from our ancestors to us. It's time we understand this whole subject better. I, for one, can't wait. It's our future, and it's always belonged to us. Hello, everyone. I'm Nathan, otherwise known as the Old Man, Old Man Builds. We're here with Ian. We're also here with Benefactor TV, and we're talking about coils today. You guys gonna say hi?
What's going on, everybody? Sorry, my stream just crashed, so I got to put it back up. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you.
Hello. Yeah, you too.
So, Ian, we have your coil up on the screen here right now. Can you just explain a little bit about what's going on with this one?
Yeah, that's me going down a bit of a Gerald rabbit hole. I've just picked up from what he was saying about it. I mean, his presentation got cancelled so many times on APEC. I kind of thought, well, how difficult can this be? So anyway, so I gave it a shot, and when I started realizing that you're using basically geometry, so you're starting off. I start off with triangles and squares, pentagons, octagons, and uh, so basically you start at one point and then just working around it, and you're moving forward by one each time, and that's what gives you the overall kind of shape.
So,
You do it to so the basic premise that I'm trying to pick up from what I've heard Gerald and others talk about is the differential is that the field pressure is different from each side within each coil, and then I have to repeat this and do it the opposite sense on the top, so that you get up this change of angles of where the energy has to flow. It's kind of interacting with all the other different angles that are in there in a constructive way, hopefully, and then so that will then, because it's going faster on the longer ends, but it's got more of an abrupt angle to turn. It's basically creating a differential pressure between the different layering, and so it's got a movement inside it. That's what I seem to think. Jeremiah, I think, mentioned something that was almost like there's a temporal thing going on at the center of it as well, and I know
definitely a temporal thing going on in the center.
You've got, yeah, so it's so then you've got your cold energy, 0 point energy potentially in the center that is filling in to try and equalize the system, but it can't do it when it's running like this all the time. Then you're getting that inflow of energy trying to equalize it, I think. Anyway, that's what I kind of took from it.
Gotcha.
So,
yeah, it kind of looks like Gerald's coil, one of them anyway. I think he's stacked 3 in his.
yeah. Well, it's not. This was just the first attempt, really, just to get a feel for how to wind things like this, and because I'd never done it before. So yeah, you got to write down all the numbers, or you just get lost after this the third time around. You got to number every post as well, because otherwise it's yeah, you get lost really quickly. So
it looks like it because you could see the points where it's connecting, and it's a long distance away.
Yeah, well, it's back to the triangular form at the top, but essentially because it's a mix of ratios as well. Because if you've got there's another picture that I found online, I think I sent to you, was it's kind of like a bunch of circles together, and it has all the points around it. And when you actually look at ratios in music, like sort of 3 to 2, which is Pythagorean fifths, and 4 to 3, which is fourths, the perfect fourths, you can actually see the actual around the circumference, you see where they are in relation to each other, and that seems to be embedded in the coil as well, into the geometry, because it has all the ratios. Well, if it had 60 nodes, then you would have all the ratios available, but with 24, you have you're limited to like 5, I find so far. But again, I haven't really looked very hard at that side of it just yet. I just thought
Okay.
I'd see how this would turn out. So yeah.
Hold on, let me pull it up real quick.
But would love to hear Gerald's take on it and what I know he's keeping
Sorry,
things on
guys.
the map for a period of time.
I must have. If I missed this, I'm sorry. But where did you get your inspiration for this design for the coil,
Gerald?
Gerald?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I was listening. I've been fascinated by it since he first showed it, and I thought, oh, very interesting. And then, but he's discussed it enough in certain ways. I kind of thought I've got a pretty good handle on what he's doing. So I thought, well, I'll give it a shot and just you know, I'll just spend a bit of time on it and see what I can come up with, and I'll be learning something along the way, and I might find it different. Who knows? So I'm just working with that principle. So yeah, so that circular diagram there was basically
Give me a second, I'll put
it
it back.
shows you the ratios of I think it's 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 1 to 2 in the center, and so but it's really nice the way it actually shows it almost like in a three-dimensional format with and how the geometry contains the energy, the bubble inside each one of it, and it grows and grows as you increase the nodes. But I thought also if you rotate the ones inside, and this implies a rhythm to me as well. And I often wondered, well, how do you get rhythm into coils? You know, I used to be a drummer many years ago, and I always know what music and rhythm feels and to be part of, and it's special. So there's when things are special, there's usually like harmony in music. It's special. There's usually a reason why it is the way it is. So you try to think, well, let's go for the most fundamental source that you can find in this, and that's it. So if you go to Pythagorean fifths and just start at 1, work your way up, but you're multiplying by 3 and dividing by 2 for each fifth. The reason why I think it's fundamental is because when you pluck a string on a what do you call it, unichord, um, the next string to that vibrates at specifically 3/2 beside it, and that fifth then denotes the root note of the next chord structure above it.
It's a
So,
sympathetic response.
and then you think, well, what's vibrating, and what's the vibration reacting with? And you have to say it's not just the air. If we live in an ether or an energy medium, it's vibrating within that medium as well, and it's causing the sympathetic vibration beside it, which is a very natural way to do this. And so that's quite a this is interesting, right? I went down this because another kind of very natural process obviously is DNA. And somebody wrote a paper on this back in the 1990s, I think it was. And what they did was that they found all the resonant infrared points within the 4 molecules here of the basic DNA structure, building blocks. And they found that every point had a wave number, and then they transferred that into a frequency and then divided it, just in octaves down until they got it into the audible range and placed them on the notes on the keyboard, right? So I thought, okay, but at this point I'm working with Pythagorean fifths, and I realized that if you have 12 iterations of fifths, they arrive 7 octaves up, but it's not the same note as you would have if you multiply 2 to 1 like everybody does to go up octaves, and then you end up 7 octaves up. But if you do that same iteration using Pythagorean fifths, 3 to 2 is not compatible with 2 to 1 mathematically. So you end up with a ninth note higher on the Pythagorean fifths that represent that same octave higher. So I used Pythagorean fifths to come back down. Bit time consuming, but I got there in the end. And these are the notes that I found, which were different from the notes that they found just by halving the circuit, halving the octaves using 2 to 1 all the way down. And mine ended up starting in F sharp. And I think theirs started at C sharp or something like that. It's in the other diagram, the black and white one. Was theirs, and these are the ones that I calculated down. So again, it's just looking curious. I was curious to see what musical notes, and you've got the King's Chamber and the Great Pyramid, and they say that's an F sharp, I think it was. And anyway, so when I recalculated all those numbers down, I mean, it could mean absolutely nothing at all, but it was an interesting thing for me to do, just to get the right sequence of notes, musical notes that equate to those, and looking for the similarities within it all. Interestingly, though, and they mentioned it in the paper, there's a gap there, and you'd think there would be kind of a spectrum of notes everywhere. Yeah, that's from their paper. You see, it's you've got about 2/3 of the way up, you've got a gap with very little or nothing in it at all, and then it picks up again, and you've got a bit more. That same pattern shows obviously in mine, and you just wonder, what is that gap when you're looking at? Is it significant in any way? And I don't know, but it was interesting to see it there. Yeah.
Well, it's my opinion.
But in terms of
consider it. It's better to consider it than and not have it not be true than not consider it and have it be true, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I was curious because the Pythagorean fifth movement in octave seems to be the more correct way to do it. But you do have what's called the Pythagorean comma. That's there. I mean, different people have a different take on it, and mine may not be as correct as somebody else's. But it feels like it's more, when you go up in octaves and it's not 2 to 1. It feels it's an open system because you're not arriving at a precise point based on purely on octaves of 2 to 1. And if you go up. If you go up in 3 to 2, then you end up with a different note sequence. And they're all mod 9 as well. Everything adds up to 9 in that way as well, which is fascinating. So,
right, from a vortex math perspective, it is.
Yeah, just from the mod 9 perspective itself, there's so much of it is written between the diameter of the moon, how far it moves in an hour is the same as its radius. Everything's kind of very, very tied together. Ever since I read that book Quadrivium, there's so much information in that. But you see that there's everything here, and it was written into it. It was all in 9s, Everything was a multiple of 9. Hey, Gerald.
What's going on, Gerald?
Hello. How are you?
Hello, Joe.
Good.
That's a gorgeous. I know exactly.
Well, it's not finished. It's not finished. That's half of it. I've got to put the other half on top. But I was going to have to redo the entire number system on it to be able to get it in reverse, going back up out of it. I'm trying to work with your idea and your Coil system, because I got fed up waiting for the presentation.
I apologize. You know what? I guess you could call it a series of unfortunate circumstances.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I know. Yeah. How bizarre. But anyway, that was just my initial. I just wanted to try out using the different shapes. Obviously, the triangle, square,
exactly,
hexagon, and then I went up to octagon. And then I was thinking about doing a circle around the outside, and I thought, no, let's just. And I just went back, and then I went back into the triangle. So it's kind of, it opens and then closes, and then I was going to reverse it. I've just been picking up on what you've been saying.
You know what?
I'm going to reverse it, start from 12, and then work my way in the opposite sense around the same posts, and then build it out to the octagon, and then back into the triangle at the top.
You're absolutely dead on. You're in the right direction all the way around. That's what, a 36-point coil?
No, that's 24.
That's 24.
It should be 36, I think. It should be, but I mean, when you're advancing it, I'm having to you know, I think actually I retarded it by going one less to move the shape in a clockwise pattern, but it kind of it's moving counterclockwise.
No, you
So,
actually
but
I don't know exactly how you wound that, but just by looking at it, I would say you're almost dead on to the way that I'm doing it. I'm not sure though, because your weave pattern doesn't seem to be completely symmetrical, but how you have double layers in there.
mhm.
You know what? The minute I did, me and Nathan were talking about this the other day. I'm going to actually teach a class exactly how to wind my coil, and you need to be there because I think you would be ahead of the class. I don't mean to you know, sound like
Yeah,
you're the star student, so to speak, but you understand how the weaving pattern goes, and triangle and hexagon and cubic are definitely in there, and it's how
right.
you interweave them, and when you stop on your number pattern and pick up on the next number pattern, that will make the hugest difference on way that energy is going to flow. And if you make that slight mistake, it'll almost cancel your secondary out. So I don't know exactly how you got that done, but that looks beautiful. That's right off the top of my head. I'd say that would work to some degree.
Oh, well, there it is. I had to write down all the numbers. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so if I find that if I didn't have it written down, I got lost within the first few turns around. I thought, oh, where was I? Somebody said something, and then it's back to the start again. So
I'll
yeah, just having it written down like that.
For instance, I have part of a book that I'm making on exactly how to make these coils and the number sequencing as well. So I totally get where you're at. And you have to have it because you're in the middle of winding and you think you're on one number and not the other. You won't realize until you got 3 wraps around and you're like, oh, okay, that geometrical form is done, and you have to unwind it if you even can, and then start from that point. So yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
that's good.
It had to.
I applaud you. You're doing awesome. Without anybody's help at all, did you have any instruction whatsoever? Did you just pick it up and go for it?
No. I listened to what Jeremiah said in terms of the principle behind it, and he basically described it fairly succinctly what it really was doing, and how when I just 3D printed the initial kind of former for it with the posts, and then just thought, well, and it just became quite obvious that there was a way to do this to make it sequential, going around it and then changing the shape. And once you get to the natural finish of that one, you then start the next the next set of geometry. You get round to the starting point of that, having gone all the way around it. I mean, the triangles were the longest, and there was a relationship, obviously, between the amount of time you go around with the amount of connection points.
Depending on the form that you want, the coil you're looking for, and the field you're trying to form, because every coil that you make will form a different shape of magnetic field, and it will increase or decrease your electrostatic field depending on the pinch of the coil, the form of the coil, how many layers you have. Is it like a set of stairs? Does it work like scales? There's a few things that are involved, but you're for just picking it up and listening. Hey man, hats off. That's good job.
Yeah, but I also saw that it has with ratios in it, because I mean all the geometries have different ratios to their inner angles as well, but also there's a rhythm in there as well, which was interesting. That was noticeable when I was kind of doing it, and I've always wondered how to include rhythm in a coil, because it has a direction, and then all these different nodal points will strike different things at different times. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
So when you're done winding your coil, use I would use plastic zap straps. That's what I use to solidify the coil to get it to a point where I can put it in resin if that's the route you're going. And if you use the zap straps, it's like pinching the edges, and you can get rid of your posts, and then your coil becomes three-dimensional. Like, it doesn't have to be nailed to a board, so to speak, right?
Yeah. No, I saw that from yours. You're using cable ties, right? Is that what you called?
Yep.
They're cable ties? Yeah.
Cable ties, zap straps, kind of a different name for the same thing. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And then I've got that, so I can actually insert those around and then just wrap them and pull them tight to tighten up the outside edges of it. Yeah.
So now that you're building these coils and you get the fact that there's a rhythm, there's actually, like, I built about 175 different kinds, and the sequencing of where you put your triangles, your cubes, your hexagons, it matters in comparison to what you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to achieve, say, a PEMF system for healing, I would put in certain, I don't want to say it just outright, because we're going to show how to do this in detail, right? So it's like giving it away, but at the same time, I'm not charging for it. I'm still giving it away. But we talked about doing a structured class on teaching this. But there is a sequence that can give you, I wouldn't say free energy or over unity. I'll say real efficient system. Okay.
Right.
And then there's another sequence that would help you get lift. And then the same form, but a less windings on certain wraps will give you a really good PEMF system for pulse electromagnetic frequency healing. So when you start building different coils and testing them, you're going to see how they kind of come together. But a word of warning, until you get to the level where you've done a bunch of testing on smaller coils, I personally wouldn't go over 18 inches. Just until you get to the level where you understand how the fields are going to be pushed out, how they're compressed, how they're pinched. Because if you go a little further than that, your outcomes are different. Because you can scale this up, right? But your anomalies get a little bit more intense as the coils get larger, and then your efficiency for putting out energy is a little different. It works differently. It's hard to explain without giving away the golden goose, right? But I mean, we're going to give it away in a very near future video series. I'm actually going to do my presentation on OldMan builds and Bernie's Friday night free energy. I'm not waiting for APEC anymore. So
okay. Oh, cool. Excellent. Oh, that's good
so
to hear.
It's coming, and it's very, very, very shortly. Maybe this Friday. Depends. I got a couple contracts I have to complete this week. We'll see how much time I have, but hopefully this Friday, maybe next Friday at the latest. So that's where I'm at with that. Anyway.
Nice. No, I look forward to it. For sure.
I appreciate you doing this work. That's anyone and everyone that can get into this, who can pick it up like you, they should. Like Nathan, on top of his game. Ben, he's doing the same thing, just slightly different. We're all working on the same principle, and I think everybody and anyone who can or even has the desire to do this should. So, good job, man. That's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
that?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, I've ordered more wire.
So, can you guys explain
a lot more wire?
I hear that. I have spools. Go ahead, Nathan.
Can you guys explain wire gauge, and then also, Ian, if you don't mind, can you explain the tones versus the coil? And I'll put the coil back up. You guys hear me?
Are you talking? You mean the ratios of the
What's the
angles?
wire gauge you guys are using to wind your coils?
Oh, the wire.
Then
Did you want to go ahead first, or do you want me to? Go ahead.
You go ahead.
You want me to go ahead?
You're doing it right.
Okay. So the coil that you see that's 12 inches with the pickup coils around it, that's 22 gauge. Both the primary and the secondary are 22 gauge. On one of the previous lives, I had said they were 2 different gauges, but I had looked into my notes and I was wrong. I apologize. Don't hang me for it. But they're both the same gauge on the primary and the secondary. And I don't know. I've worked with quite a few different gauges from 32 all the way to 16, and your power ratios change. Again, it comes down to what you're trying to do with what coil you're building. So for me, between 20 and I don't know, I like to use between 20 and 26 gauge, give or take. I don't know what you're using for your coil though.
I had some 28 gauge, and so I was using the 28 gauge just to start with, but I've got a couple of big spools of 22, so that's good to know as well. But I was doing it on I was having trouble getting the posts. Some of them kept breaking off and things like that. So eventually I just kind of thought, well, I'll use a thinner gauge wire, and then it should be able to hold and not put as much pressure on the posts as it gets higher. So yeah. And again, I wasn't even sure because I didn't want to damage the wire by making the posts V shaped. So because I wanted to make sure that the angle was maximized for what it was supposed to be, rather than it rounding off too much as well. So I wasn't so sure about whether that was right or not either. But I just thought if maybe just working on the principles that I was and just rotating it around using the different geometric forms, I thought that if there's something odd, if I might find something different, who knows?
I think you have. I'll give you a bit of a tip. When I first started this, what I used was a piece of wood, and I used carpenter nails, the big long 3-inch ones.
Mm-hmm.
But I put a plastic straw over each nail as I nailed it into the 24 points, so that when I wrap the coil, I can put as much pressure on the posts as I want. And then when I was done with it, as I put the zip tie through it, I can literally pull the straw, pull the zip tie, done, and pull the nail out. It was no issue whatsoever. So I don't know if you want to go that route, but it's just it's what I did when I began.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I had the 3D printer, and I thought, I'll just print out a former and see what it goes like. So yeah.
If I had a 3D printer, I would have done the same. So yeah, I understand. Yeah. When it comes to the gauge of wire, I don't think it matters so much as your gauge after. Oh, I you know what? Between 32 and 20 really doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter if you're running high voltage or high current, because of the way that the geometrical forms allow the energy to flow in the system. It's almost like once it's flowing, the toroid shape of the coil itself acts as the full current where the current's running. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that properly. As that energy is flowing geometrically, the toroid itself becomes one. So it's like, instead of having all these individual wires and layers, they all become one magnetic tube. And at different frequencies, it does different things. So,
and you have the differential pressure from across from the top to the bottom, and that gives you your polarity, and you've got your equatorial plane is right through the center, I presume, horizontally.
Absolutely. And different forms and different sequences will push that field out further from your sides, or cancel it out altogether and focus it strictly in the center, depending on what you're trying to do. These geometrical coils, they're the key to a lot of different tech.
Sure.
Have you started pulsing it yet, or are you in the process of still winding?
No, it's still winding. I've done half of it in terms of what I wanted to do, and now I've got to go 180 degrees and then start from the other direction. I'm assuming that's the horseshoe point of whereas one coil is overlaid on top of the other. So I've got the first. I think what I've done is built what I thought was the first coil, going
Yeah.
through, going out, and then back in again, and then I was going to reverse, just basically turn it 180 degrees. So I'm starting on 12 instead of 24, and then I'm going in the opposite direction to be the same as the horseshoe thing. So you've got an open system in the center, but then one coil, and you still have the ability to join one coil to the other externally if you wanted to, because the wires are all there. So I
See,
wasn't sure exactly. Mhm.
no, you did good. How do I put this? This is a little piece of constructive criticism. Please don't take offense. For what you've done is amazing. And this is why I think when me and Nathan were discussing about teaching a class on this, I kind of have to teach certain points specifically. And what you did for the 180, I get it. That's what most people actually do, but that's not how I base. There's a very specific principle that I kind of kept close to my chest on this one, but it's the way that you wind the coil. When you wind, say, one form, let's say a triangle, and you're winding it clockwise. So you get your form done, then you wind 180 degrees out of phase counterclockwise, that same form. Then you switch your next layer.
Oh, okay.
So that gives you the ability to layer and capture the skin effect in between each layer as they're crossing.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
It, like I said, it's
Nice.
something I've kind of kept close to chest and not told too many people about, because there's people out there that are trying to, let's just say, obtain this nefariously. Just trying to
Yeah,
be
ever since I got into any of this, that word nefarious is pretty common.
yeah, you understand.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Well, it goes
just-
against regular
I think
physics in a sense. So academia doesn't
I know
like sorry.
what you're doing is fantastic, I think. So it's just great. And it's great that you're sharing it as well, for so many people to keep it close to them and die with it usually. But
It was given freely to me, so I want to give it freely to everybody else. But at the same time, I've protected myself. When I first started this journey, I was trying to get it open source really quick and give it to everyone, right? And I still want to do that, but there's a certain way of doing it so that, like you said, there's nefarious people in the background. So, you got to have safeties in play once you start to see certain anomalies with these coils. I have 3 dead man switches, and they're set up in 3 different medias, 3 different forms. So if anything stupid happens to me, I'd never commit suicide in a million years. My beliefs wouldn't, I couldn't do it, right? So that being said, you still have to protect yourself in a sense, because we're dealing with technologies that have been found before. This isn't like there's nothing new under the sun, but it's new to this generation and new to the people that haven't played with it, which is, me and others. And so as long as I think everybody's open and shares their information, then this tech will get out to we may not see it in the market in our time, but our children might. And that's kind of my goal, is to kind of get the info out, get people working on it. Just like John Bedini used to say, let's have the people decide. Let's put it out there. If they want to work on it, if they want this type of tech, great. If they don't, that's okay too. Some people don't have time to put systems like this in their house or tinker around and find how these systems work. Some people would rather just pay a bill. That's okay too.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. On a practical note, though, if you, I was looking into. I know you're not keen on Malcolm Bendel, but I took a look around down that rabbit hole And
so did
but
I.
what I did like was he actually he put in patent applications to protect his ideas, not so that people could not then just take it and produce a patent, and then just bury it, right?
Oh, I get
Because
that.
then he wouldn't legally have any rights to it anymore. So that's also a consideration as well, right?
I thought about that, but that's why I keep certain points to myself that'll only be taught in private. And if somebody was to choose to do that, with all due respect to the law, I don't care. I created a lot of the things that came to bring this tech together. It's not my tech, but at the same time, I did 15 years of work on it, and I don't care what law says what. You're not going to stop me from sharing this information. You could take me to court. I don't own anything. So what are you going to take from? Blood from a stone? Good luck. I know it's kind of a bad attitude, and I apologize to everybody out there listening, but I'm not in it to win it. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it to just share the truth that I know, and you can take it for what it is, right? And when it comes to patents, I kind of view the patent office as a legal thievery, right? Because if I put my system into the patent office and they decide, oh, well, this is a really good system and I want it, they're just going to take it and shelve it, and then nobody sees it. For others, I understand, go that route. If you have the money to fight big corporations and 20 lawyers at a time, then go for it. I personally don't want the battle. I'm just going to share the information as knowledge, and I hope that if it turns into something for everybody, that for me, I like it like this. If I was to teach one person, under the obligation, I would only teach that person if they taught two people. And the two people that they taught have to each teach two people, and so on and so on and so on. And that's how I kind of think that we should be getting this tech out. I agree with, in a sense, the way that Malcolm Bendall is expressing it, because he patented it to protect it. But I did a deep study into Malcolm Bendall as well. Awesome tech. Unfortunately, it was created 40 years prior by a man by the name of Paul Pantone. And he didn't share his tech. He tried to get it patented, and he tried to go the route of education through universities, and they locked him up for it, tried to commit him to an insane asylum. And then what they did is they let him out when he was, I think it was years later. And then he went to another country and created universities teaching people how to make the Geet motor. And Malcolm Bendall's system is essentially the Geet motor with an external reactor, whereas Paul Pantone's system has an internal reactor. They're the same system. So, I mean, I applaud Malcolm Bendall for doing the work that he did. And the fact that he's put it into ships and cars and trucks, hey, man, hats off to the guy. But I think it was somebody else's tech that got embellished on. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, hey, prove me wrong. I'll admit that I'm wrong, and I'll apologize. I have no problem being wrong.
But no, but from what I've heard of him speaking about it, he hasn't really said that he said that these are the ideas of other people that he's just pulled together, and but basically he's got his model there. So it seems, I mean, anyway, but I mean, it's interesting. I just brought it up because of the whole protection.
Yeah,
the
I
information,
get that totally.
just to prevent other people from actually seeing what you're doing. And then, I mean, this has no moving parts, huh? I mean, it's perfect. It's like a solid state energy machine, right? Solid
but
state.
Remember,
that's going for gold.
There's no moving parts, as in say moving magnets or a spinning wheel. But there are moving forces, and you have to take that into account when you're building these systems. So but absolutely, this is the goal, right? to literally put it in your house, put in a ground wire, put in an antenna, hook it up to the system, turn it on. That's it. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to pay for your hydro bill, by all means. If you want to build something like this, even better. That's what I
Sure.
see. Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Oh,
So
well, I
was
look forward to your presentation on it. It'll be great.
I appreciate that. I'll do the best that I can for everybody that's out there. I'm going to kind of do it in two ways. I'm going to give a scientific explanation and presentation, and I'm also at the same time going to lay out the layman's terms, like when I'm talking about, say, the Miller effect or the skin effect, and then I'm going to explain what that is, and I'm going to do it in backyard lingo so that everybody gets it. You know what I mean? Why keep it hidden?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
So I
Great.
appreciate that.
No, I look forward to it.
Did that answer your question, Nathan?
Yes, you guys did. You guys are doing awesome. If you don't mind, I'm going to show your coil real quick, Gerald. And I want to show what you put up the last one that you did. So,
was that the question on the Oh, that one. Yeah. Is that the 300 volt one, or is
no,
that?
it's not. You never posted it.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I apologize to everybody out there. I remember why I didn't post it, because I didn't have time to do the editing.
121.
I did get that editing program from you there, Nathan. I appreciate that.
All on the interior.
Sorry, let me rewind it.
Okay, I'll shut up.
3 coils, 3 meters. Check it out. 3, 2, 1. 121, 175, 97. 3 phase. All on the interior. Have a great day.
All right, Gerald, you want to explain what's going on here?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
That's not right.
You gotta have fun. Life's short, right? Okay, so you want me to start from the beginning as to what I'm doing here with the circuit and how this is working, or just
Just
okay?
how you-
So
yeah, go ahead. Whatever you're doing, the setup of it, and then into how you got the numbers.
okay, so normally these coils that are sitting on the, like these pickup coils that are sitting on the inside core of the vortex coil, they're wrapped with 120 winds. They're ferrite cores. Usually they're perfectly 120 degrees apart from each other, but one of them fell and I just quickly pushed it into the camera's view. So that's why you see how it's off. But when they're 120 degrees apart, the voltages balance a little better. So they're not so different. That being said, the circuit that I'm running this on is a horizontal deflection transistor out of a 28-inch tube TV. I believe it's a C20, it's a C2558, I believe. And it has a 12-volt battery for a power supply. I'm pulsing it with a function generator on the primary only. And so once it, so once I pulse it on the primary, the secondary, the 2 wires that come off there are just going to a hairpin circuit without a load. So it's basically like a spark gap, and then it's got 2 capacitors, but I didn't complete the circuit. I just left it as it was. So then using the horizontal deflection transistor, because it has such a very fast rise time and a very fast fall time, I'm able to get these voltages. And the faster I can pulse the system, the higher the voltages go. So that's how that particularly works there. What you're seeing is me pulsing the primary, and the secondary the field builds up in it, and when it collapses, creates a spark, shoots back in, pushes into the primary, creating a current, kind of like a wave, right? And that's how you're seeing those voltages. And there's a different voltage set that you can get on the outside of the coil. So as those three pickup coils are in the inner core, let's say the 175 volt one in the middle meter, and you could put another one right opposite to that, I should pick up somewhere around 50 to 60 volts just on the outside, right across from that one coil, because it matters. They link, but they link by inductiveness over top and underneath the coil. So it's kind of unique how it creates a vortex. And then ferrite picks it up so easily. So that's what's going on. Did that answer the question?
Absolutely. How about you, Ian? Your mic on? I see you talking.
It might be muted.
I was muted, yeah. Sorry. The pickup coils between the inside and the outside, though you've got that differential of voltage between the two. So
Yeah.
does it actually create a current through the wire coming from the inside coils pickups
Yes, it does.
towards where they're going?
Yeah,
So,
and if I take the two pickup coils, say one on the inner core and one on the outer core, and I'm to cross each line, so the output of one of the pickup coils on the inner core and the outer core's input mixed together, so it acts like almost like a PMH winding. I get even more out, and I get more current out, but a little less voltage, right? Because it's cross fielding at the same time as picking up that vortex. So, yeah.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, and is it cold? Is the temperature is different in the center to the outside?
Yes, it is actually. It depends on what I'm doing. I can make just the center hot and the outside a cooler temperature, or I can reverse that and make the inside cooler and the outside hot. I wouldn't say complete control, but I have a lot of control when it comes to that. And that has to do with the pitching of that magnetic field and controlling it. Yeah. Any other questions on this one?
You know what? Just if you don't mind, if it's possible, how many layers do you have in your coil?
Oh, you know what? I didn't count it by layers because this one,
I meant like in like each coil as one layer. So is there 3 different coils in there, or is it 2, or is it just one round coil?
It's how do I explain this? Let me just think about this for a second, how to explain this so it's understandable. It's 2 coils, but it's not 2 coils until you wrap the whole thing, because it's wrapped on one wire. And then it's cut in a specific part, making it 2 coils. Does that make sense? That's why I kind of have to teach how it works, right? Like, because it's not an easy answer. It's because of the way that I wound it, right? Let's just say I was inspired to wind it this way. It's all one wire, but it's cut in the middle in a certain way where it makes 2 coils.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow.
You could
what was your inspiration for doing this in the first place? What brought you to this kind of design?
Honestly, it started with the Jewel Thief, John Bedini's schoolgirl circuit. I thought it was just amazing, right? You're lighting a little 110 volt twisty bulb with like a little AA battery. But then after working with that and some time, I had a very amazing dream. and it inspired me. And it gave me the very specific numbers for the coil that you see me experimenting on. And once I built it and started experimenting with it, my mind was blown. And ever since then, it's just been after another, one after another, after another. So I started winding them. And like I said, now I'm actually not at 175. I'm at 178 because I just built 3 new coils that haven't been seen before. And I'm going to display them shortly, probably on the presentation. But anyone could build them. Once, like you've seen, once you have that principle down, it's just like flowing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Nice. Yeah.
Was there? Yeah, this is actually kind of something you could look at if you were about to start winding coils. Dream catchers have a very unique way of winding. I wanted to mention to you though, if you wanted to wind like a basket winding weave or something called a starship coil, there's a gentleman on YouTube called Mike Powers, and I built his coil. He was the one guy built after Rodin, and his coil, he gives you the numbers on his channel, but he says you can't use his coil for military purposes or any other purpose because he found that it does unique things. But my system is a little different than his, which thankfully they won't coincide in that way. But if you wanted to maybe get an idea of how I do the inner layers, he's a good gentleman to start with. Mike Powers. Just as it sounds, it's spelled.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps you at all.
Because there's oh yeah. I mean I have a myriad of questions, but I'll just wait for the presentation because it'll all come out then. But there was a presentation this girl Sheila did on the Cosmic Summit, and she was actually showing, she was using a Rodin coil and she was feeding frequencies into it. So she was heterodyning of frequencies, right? Yeah, there she is. This is amazing. So you see the coil she has on the table, and then she's actually picking up. She's got a handheld coil pickup, and then that goes back into the software, the scope software on the in the computer. And I mean, all the numbers that she chose were all mod 9, so they have that inherent stability in them. But she's now showing a representation of what the geometric form in 3 dimensions looks like around the coil. And I was thinking, like, would that be incredible to see for your coil, for visualizing the electromagnetic fields and how they're all interacting at the same time?
I would love to see that myself. Nathan was saying that there's a program out there that does that, and if I can get my hands on it, I'd love to try it just to see, because there's I believe it's very intense.
Well, you remember, I mean, it's another vehicle as well, is that the circuit that you were using, your signal generator to play tones through the coil.
Yeah.
Right. So what I found was some other testing that I've done. I was looking at the acoustic resonance, physical acoustic resonance of coils, and I was surprised. I mean, I was using quite a thick I was using a rigid coil because I was vibrating it with a resonance speaker at one end and getting the vibration to go through the coil, and using microphones just to pick up when it was resonating. And it was unfortunately it was about 7 kilohertz, was possibly the most annoying frequency you could actually have to listen to. And certainly the complaints from the house were coming to. I just had to stop. But the acoustic resonance is much lower than its electromagnetic version, the counterpoint, obviously, right? But so it's really down there in that audible range, and that took me by surprise. But if you're then able to electromagnetically place those tones into the coil, and you find where the coil's natural resonant point is within the acoustic range, that it's another area that I think is probably, I mean, I think that we should be able to use acoustics for everything, I think.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because The if you were to take what's it called? It's a digital tuner for acoustic guitars, and I've taken a mic and I plug that into my little tuner, and I run it over the coil while it's running, and I get every note that you could possibly imagine. And if I turn it up on a certain frequency, it just rings C. So the acoustics in a very tightly wound basket winding coil, they vibrate at such a rate that your ear can pick up on that very tone. I can play a I could play a song on my coil just from those tones by playing with my function generator. Nothing else around. There's no cone, no nothing. Just the very vibration of those wires creates those tones in the air around you. Maybe they're vibrating the air molecules. Maybe they're vibrating nitrogen or the oxygen. I'm not really sure. But you can, like you said, definitely hear it. And if you have too much amplitude in there, the house doesn't like you. My cats, they don't come around me when I'm experimenting. It's kind of funny, but yeah. So I understand when it comes to acoustics for sure.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'd love to see that.
Yeah,
But being able to see the visual representation, like on a 3D representation of what's going on, is it's just another area of fascination. Be great.
Absolutely. I'd love to be able to see it. I put iron filings on the top of my coil, and it would just show me. It would almost act like a single line. And I was bringing that up to Nathan, and he suggested that the magnetic field might show up on the outside, on the sides of the coils, rather than on the top, because of the way that the system works and it polarizes the fields around it. So depending on the way that you built your coil, you may not see any iron filing visualizations either, and you might actually need to do a three-dimensional program like what we're discussing. So something to keep in mind, right? I think that scalar or ether or the quantum vacuum, call it what you will, I don't think it shows up on iron filing systems, but I think that the magnetic field that's created in order to pull that in shows up on the iron filings. It's just a matter of finding it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. So I think what the system that Sheila was using was actually it was and somehow she was taking it up in octaves into the electromagnetic spectrum within the coil, and then the pickup she was using was actually bringing it back down into the audio range, but in a visualizations way. And then the software that she had in the computer was able to actually relate that back, having gone through the electromagnetic system and then coming back in and showing it that way. So I'm not exactly sure how she did it, but I did email her and she replied eventually and said about some of the gear she was using, but not all of it. So, but it's interesting. For sure.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a question. Wonder if the air density changes the effect.
No, but you can change the effect of the air density. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, you can actually condition a room, and I've done this in my garage compared to my house. I was doing experiments, getting 100 volts out of each coil and pickup coil, and then I moved it out to the garage, and I was getting like 27 or 30 or something. I was like, what's going on? And then after a couple days of experimentation, right back up. And I couldn't understand it. And I think it has a lot to do with charge compression and charge density within that room that you create after experimenting. It's just a thought, a theory, not sure on it yet. But yeah, I think you can change the air.
So are you saying that the charge doesn't dissipate in there, in the walls, or just in the air?
I don't know about in the walls, but I would say in the air. Like when you're creating an electrostatic field such as this with a magnetic component in it, in order for, okay, I'll give you an example. I was doing a test. I had the room sealed. There was multiple windows in this room, and the door was closed, and I had run it for about an hour, hour and a half, and I had to like blow my nose or plug my nose and blow out my ears because it felt like I was walking up a mountain and the pressure was changing in the room. So I shut the coil off, but the pressure was still there until I blew off a capacitor that was linked in the system. Because that implosion quick snap went off, it was like the bubble burst and the air pressure was normal after that. So I don't know if that helps you at all, but when it comes to charge, I believe that an implosive effect, like the blowing off of a capacitor, like shorting it out, it pulls all the energy in, and I don't know where it goes. It dissipates it. Maybe the sound dissipates the energy that gets pulled in from the implosive effect. I'm not sure, but in my experience, that's what needs to be done when you change the pressure in the room.
So you actually created like a field bubble in there that contained what you were doing until you let the energy spark, and then boom, the bubble was gone.
Yeah, and I have witnesses to that who will testify in a court of law any day of the week for it. So yeah, it was crazy.
Amazing.
I had no idea that was going to occur. Otherwise, I would have kept the window open. But it was a good thing I didn't, because then it showed me that, you know, these systems aren't, they're not closed systems in the sense that we would think what a normal transformer is, right? There's lots of anomalies that surround these vortex systems, especially ones that are vortex in 180 degrees out of phase and still working. There's a lot to map out on them. I've been working on them for about 15 years, and I'm barely scratching the surface, right? There could be 1,000 of us working on this, and I don't think we'd complete the work. That's how intense it is. So
we have a question from the chat real quick. What is the max or minimum of the device?
I'll be honest, I don't know that yet. The last large test that I did, I used, one sec, I'll show you what I used.
I think what you were describing before is you said it's kind of based on the load as well.
That was my load. Okay. Just a 900 watt electric element. And
it's a heating plate?
Yep, it's a heating plate. So I used that as my load, and the coil got really cold. And I have where is it? Big neodymium magnet. I don't know if you could see that. It's 2 inches in diameter. There's two.
That's a big sucker.
Yeah, there's two of them locked together. So that big coil that you see, I had turned the 900 watt element on, and I had put the magnet in the center of the open core, and it sucked it up, held it, like levitated it, and then I could tap it with my finger, and it would roll around the inside. I did a video on it, and I called it levitation, magnetic levitation, and it spun, right? And that was from the load that I was using, and it didn't go red hot. I would say it got to about 75% of its heat, and I was watching it with my infrared camera. So I have that recorded, but I never did a video to show it. So
right, we were discussing it was exhibiting properties of being a superconductor without having to be super cooled like a superconductor.
Yeah, and the coil itself was cold. Like you could touch the coil, it should have been hot. I'm using 900 watts on 20 gauge wire. should have melted the circuit. No.
Right. That's cold electricity.
Yeah. So
Well, as we suspect.
yeah, as exactly. It still has to be extensively tested by multiple other people. Right now, it's just me presenting it.
But this is a really cool system, Gerald. I really love your work with the coils.
Thank you.
So this one said repulsion, Gerald. There's another one too.
Yeah, the repulsion one, I show it throwing the neodymium around, right? There's another part where I put it under the coil and it actually shoots it out of frame, I believe. Did you need to? I just gotta shut my camera off for a second.
That's why we wear our PPE. I hope you're wearing some safety goggles or a helmet or something when you do that.
Yeah, I wear safety goggles. Usually I wear gloves, but in these videos I just didn't care.
Sometimes they get in the way too when you're trying to be precise with your
when you're doing wiring.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry guys, my
oh, that's cool.
Washer and dryer downstairs and my daughter's doing laundry, so
oh, you're good.
Oh, hold on, that thing just levitated. Give me a second.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that will only happen with a load.
Wow.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So you've got that toroidal field that's surrounding the coil, basically, right? As you said, it turns into one field around the whole thing. I remember reading years ago, Harold Aspden, he was a British professor at Cambridge, I think, and he did some experiments where he rotated Leyden jars. This is back in like the 40s or 50s, I think, and he found that after he had been rotating it for a period of time, it would be easier to start up the next time as if there was a continuous fluid moment. So if you're spinning the ether, let's say, or 0 point, whatever you want to call it, if you're creating a movement, it actually has inertia, it seems, or potentially has inertia in it that actually keeps it there after you've stopped. You know, and maybe that's why your coil was still active, because you know, if it is like a superfluid of sorts, then, and it has inertia and it has movement, then yeah.
And if we also consider the
activity, wasn't it 5 minutes after you'd stopped?
Sorry, say that
again. I remember you showed a video once of your coil that when you stopped running it, it was still showing infrared activity about 5 minutes after you'd shut it down.
Yeah, and it wasn't, and that's the funny part. It wasn't heat. You could grab the coil and the temperature on the gauge of that camera showed that it was room temperature. But yet I'm seeing on the infrared camera the full coil, and as if it was not hot, but as if there was energy flowing through it. So that's
right. If we also consider EVOs as well, EVOs have the tendency to stick around a little bit after, you know, and they also have the tendency to steal the heat, steal the heat around them. So that might be able to account for cold electricity. I'm not sure, but.
Well, I give a tip of the hat to Nathan on that one, because I never considered temperature to be any sort of factor whatsoever, but it is.
Right.
Excuse me for 1 sec, guys. Sorry to break up the conversation. I got to just deal with something really quick. Okay, so I apologize. Excuse me for a moment.
My gravity flare gets the same thing. It's like 70-something degrees, you know what I mean, on the center plate. And then, but you touch it and it burns your finger. It's the same thing he's doing.
Yeah, it's cold electricity. Well, it might be cold electricity.
Yeah, Gerald's getting more of a vortex, though. He's getting that energy to flow in that direction.
Right, he's condensing it into a point.
Yeah, it's the way that coil's built that's doing it. We're all kind of getting a little bit, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's getting the full effect with that thing.
Right. No, that makes sense. The closer you get to that field geometry, the natural geometry of the universe and free energy flowing, the toroid shape.
Natural geometry of the universe. I believe that 100,000%.
Oh
It's-
yeah, the theory that our universe is shaped like a torus and we're on the south pole expanding. We can't see the implosion side on the top. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Can you see this here? It's
Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
this is how the visual that I get from my coil when it's working, when it's running. So it's like I pinch the fields and I split the energy, so there's charge separation. You got your north
Wow.
blue ball, your red for yourself for a red ball, and they're chasing each other, right?
Wow.
As the vortex comes down, you have to have 2 points of energy that it's chasing. So it's like chasing each other in the center of the core, and then on the outside, it's pushing that energy out because of the way that it's pinched. Okay, so
Right.
you bring up the natural part of the universe, and I gotta tell you, in a dream, this is what I was shown. Give me just a sec. So it's like okay. I know it's crazy drawing. I'm trying to do it quick and I can't do it justice. But in what I see, this being the North Pole, this being the South, our universe is a toroid. This would be our sun. Bad color, I know. But as it goes around our equatorial plane of our universe, it's going up into the upper part of the plane. And then after so many thousands of years, it's going below the equatorial plane. And it does that consistently as time flows. And by doing so, it creates a polarization, this being the north, this being the south. So if you had a way of mimicking the natural flow of the energy of the universe, you could essentially open a portal if you had the right number and end up anywhere you want it to be. Just a
That
theory.
makes sense. That
Don't
makes sense
know.
because, in my opinion, the universe is just nothing but fractals. You know, it's fractals of itself. And if you zoom in or out on a fractal, it's relatively the same pattern, and that's what we see in nature a lot.
I would agree. I would say that the stars are fractal energy that's flowing. That's what we see as we see them sparkle and move throughout space. I think they're definitely held in space. I believe that planets all have their positions, but I think they're positioned due to the external magnetic fields of each planet that's in sequence or close by. Just like as if you were to hold two magnets close together, but they're in opposite poles, they push off each other. They're not going to slam together. They keep a certain distance. Well, if you had all that in a circle, you could actually keep certain magnets at a distance, right? So it's just a thought, just a theory, something to, think about.
It makes sense. You know, like if we see, magnetism and particles and then, like actual material that we can see, and then we zoom out on that scale and a larger scale, it's not unreasonable to believe that a universe would have a polarization as well.
And I can be totally wrong. Like I said, I've been wrong before. Prove me wrong. Hey, I'll admit it. So yeah, that's my.
There's also the consideration that apparently it's become sort of an academic fact that the universe is 99.9% plasma of different types, of different temperatures and different everything, and it's like mass and matter are almost like a little accident that happened out of the plasma, and plasma
Right.
forms its own dust, and it's interesting because it goes on about it's a book I read recently by Robert Temple. It's called A New Science of Heaven, I think it's called. It's
Yeah.
really fascinating, but his work is based on academic research, not just his kind of theory, but it was all to do with the Kordylewski clouds being that there are two of them, but they're 9 times the size of the Earth, and they're between us and the Moon, and they have every property that would actually allow them to be intelligent, not in organic forms. So, and they've been around billions of years or longer than us. So maybe we're just an experiment of theirs.
I get that,
Wow.
and I totally understand. I read maybe 2 academic papers a day, depending on the subject, but I only have half faith in academia. When they canceled the ether and started calling it the quantum vacuum, I kind of lost faith in the fact that when they predict new things, there's half of the equation missing already. So how could they be dead on? How could they be absolutely accurate when they negate half of all energy equations? And hey, don't get me wrong, I give them kudos. There's a lot of people that put a lot of life stock into their research. But I think they unfortunately took a misstep somewhere along the way. Need to pull it back and have a good look at it. It's my
Oh,
opinion.
totally. I totally agree. It was just that Temple's book was actually, he was pulling data from people like Bostic and, you know, the people who really did the foundational work.
Yeah.
And also via biophotonics as well. All those things that have been really suppressed over the years. But he did incredible research into it and actually brought all these other papers forward, and basically as a record for the information that should be freely available, but he's had to search hard for it. So it's really it's fascinating.
What was the name of the author?
It's called Robert Temple.
Yep.
And it's a new science of heaven is the name of the book.
Perfect.
It was actually,
I'll have to look into that. Maybe I'll order it. I'm always looking to expand my awareness by far.
yeah.
So I'll read the book, and you know what? If I overstepped my opinion, then I'll apologize. You know what I mean? So yeah, you give me something.
I know.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Cool.
You know, there's a lot missing out there, really.
Well, I don't think it's for lack of wanting to research it. It's just unfortunate that in academia, they get pushed down certain paths because that's where the funding is. It's no longer about the search for truth by using science, and I mean science through experimentation, because really that's what true science is. It's not writing a theory and calling it whatever you want to call it. Give me something that you built. Give me something to back that up. Show me something that you're doing that physically can show your effects that you're talking about. And unfortunately, with the academic community, I haven't seen that. And with multiple different universities, they have embellished on some of the research. But there is a lot of people out there that give their heart and soul into their work. It's just, I think they're looking in the wrong direction. And I think if they were able to get funding for what we're working on, we'd be leaps and bounds ahead of where we are today. So I don't spit on all. I think there's a lot of geniuses out there. They're just unfortunately controlled geniuses.
We also have a few very stubborn people who refuse to just acknowledge new science like the ether at all. You know, they're just too indoctrinated, and they're too far gone to be, you know, even dealt with, in my opinion.
Well, it's kind of hard if you've based your entire career researching specific things in specific ways, and then somebody tells you, actually, that's not the way it works.
Right, it shocks the fundamentals of your whole.
There's a lot of reluctance in there to change your mind when you've spent your entire life's work is based on, on something that may not have been as correct as you thought it was, right? So I understand that as well. So you get a lot of intransigence because people don't want to think out of the box when it's upsetting their apple cart, you know. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, which is just human. That's just human nature as well, you know. But the
Yeah,
funding is that's the big thing. Nobody can do research into what they would really love to do because they find an anomaly. They go, oh, I should look down there. I mean, that's what science is supposed to do. But if they can't get funding for that project, then they have to look elsewhere, and they need their tenureships. They need to keep feeding their families like everybody else. So they're kind of stuck in a hard place, really. So
yeah.
not through lack of abilities. It's just through lack of opportunity, really.
Yeah,
So,
it doesn't pave the way for out of the box thinking. The system, it's kind of stomps it out in every aspect.
Yeah, you'll see
well,
me.
we do it. So I'm sure
Yeah.
they do it as well,
Right.
but they just don't have the opportunity to really do anything about it.
Or they don't want to put their funding.
Right. No. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There's not going to be any serious development from it.
Like, you'll see me harp on academia, but I won't harp on individuals doing work in academia because they're doing what they believe is right. You know what I mean? I may not agree with it, but I harp on the system because the system is broken. The people in it
exactly
just
right.
do what they think are right. So
that's exactly right.
When you hear me harp on academia, it's on the system. It's not on the people. just
oh yeah, no, this is this is sitting on the magnets, right? And levitates it up as you connect each circuit.
All right, Gerald, it's all you, buddy. I'll play.
So what is this a similar weave to what you were using in your main coil, or is this a different? It's just a different manipulation of the fields.
It's a different weave, and it's a lot less. Let's see. This one's 12 feet on either side bifilar. So it's 24 feet in total. That's it. And it's made with 30 gauge, I think, or 32. I can't remember. It's almost as thin as a human hair.
Right.
It's very hard to wind. When you pull on it, it breaks. So it was very difficult. But the basic principle is still the same. And the winding sequence was slightly different than you see in that big coil.
So what exactly is going on here?
I'm pulsing my primary. I can't remember how much. I think it was 1,000 hertz on that one.
What we have here is two modified Joule thieves, both using this 12-volt battery, which, as you can see, is fairly dead. We have a function generator pulsing at 1,000 hertz, 10% duty cycle square wave. Both channels are going to pulse at the exact same pulse rate. And the first channel is going into the primary, and the second channel is going into the secondary. And what we're going to attempt is to see if we can raise this coil not once, but twice. Now, when you send a signal against or at each other, usually it cancels out. So let's see. The primary is turning on in 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to turn the secondary on in 3, 2, 1. As you can see, the signal didn't cancel out. All right, everybody, you have a great day.
That was so cool. That's amazing. So it jumped twice. Hold on, you said the signal didn't cancel out, but the energy and everything, it's like two separate energies in there?
Yeah, well, what it is, it comes from the same battery, but it's two signals from the signal generator. Because the coil is wrapped 180 degrees out of phase, I pulsed the primary with 1,000 hertz. I think it was 10% duty cycle. I can't remember. And then I did the exact same pulse frequency on the secondary right at each other. So normally in a system like a solenoid, if you were to pulse a signal at each other, it just cancels each other out. And what do you get? Maybe a bit of a field or something. I'm not even sure. But mine doesn't cancel out. When I pulse my primary and then I pulse my secondary at each other, it multiplies. And so what you were seeing is I pulsed the primary, it created a field that had lift. Then I pulsed the secondary and it raised even more. So that's what was going on there.
And is that just sending the opposite polar magnetism to the magnet face, and that's what's forcing it up? Is it repulsion?
I would say it's repulsion. Whether or not it's magnetic current that's pushing it up is debatable, because when I pulse those coils, I lose magnetism after 20 hertz. At least evident magnetism. That doesn't mean that there isn't a magnetic field there, but a magnet isn't affected by it when it reaches above 20 hertz. It'll polarize, and then it just sits there. It doesn't turn, it doesn't hum, nothing. But if I turn the hertz down to, like, say, 20 and below, I can make it turn on its axis, or I can make it turn the other way. I can't remember the term I was using for. I was explaining this to Jeremiah Pop, and he had seen it on video as well. I just can't remember. It's like when you have North Pole and the South Pole, it's not supposed to be able to turn this way, right? Well, the coil does that. It'll also turn on its pole, but it'll only turn on its pole 20 hertz and below. When it spins like this on its axis, I can get to maybe 85 hertz tops, and then it stops. And then it's just power output from there, and a high-pitched squeal or sound that comes out of the coil, right? So I'm not sure, excuse me, if it's a magnetic field pushing off or if it's a scalar field pushing off, because the power is so minimal. It's just on the watt meter. Sometimes it doesn't even show up. And I'm not sure if that's the same video or not. I'm not even using the 12-volt battery. I'm just using the signal generator. So if I'm just using the signal generator, it shouldn't be lifting at all. There's not enough power to create a magnetic field at all, right? So there's obviously something else going on there. Still working on what? I have some ideas, though. Yeah. So I don't know if that answered the question or not, but yeah. Any thoughts on this, Nathan, on how you think it's working?
Sorry, give me 1 second. I was over there looking something up for you.
I apologize.
It's okay. No, I think what's going on is you've created the bubble, but now it has to build on top of it. So you've already set the fact that it's there. You know what I mean? And because it's 180 out of phase, it's creating a secondary one, and it can't occupy the same space. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you were to turn it on the other way, it would still go one, and it would still go the other, because you're able to build on top of each other. So if you put a third winding in there, did the same thing, I would expect it to jump 3 times. So if you understand what I mean, you're creating the field already, and then boom, boom, each one.
And I know you're dead on that one, because I never told anybody that I pulsed it the opposite direction and it did the same thing. I kept that one to myself.
Good call. You let it out now. Got it out of you.
Well, it wasn't a secret. It shows that you know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? I left it out because it's really not important unless this conversation was to occur, which is like,
buddy, that's one of the most important things right there.
Yeah,
that's like new tech right there. You got to have it now.
Yeah, both ways. It works both ways. It does make a difference. You're absolutely right, Nathan.
Well, it tells you about pressure and relationship between the coil and the magnet and what it's doing. So you think it's just one thing when you have that, right? But say if it was in a system where it's held tight, now you're causing compression in it, right? And then you get a spring effect out of it. That's amazing. I'm
already working on the third coils, 2 separate ones, so that I can do that test. Because
another set of double coils above it. So I don't know if you have to put paper in between, but you can lift on the double and then see if it'll create a field above it and lift on the double again.
Well, when I built that coil that you see lift above the magnet, I built an identical one. So there's two of them. So I can do that test. That's awesome.
That'd be truly interesting because it kind of tells you a lot more about what's going on too. Because the magnet's not under it this time, but the wire is a magnetic field. So will it continue to do it?
I like the way you're thinking. I'm going to have to try that. Absolutely. And while I was watching your video earlier today, something in my head clicked and I wrote down a sequence that I have to try. I think I may have what you're looking for. Because if this sequence works, then it's the exact same thing you're talking about the gravel flyer. Identical.
Hey, Gerald, did you ever mention what frequency you were pulsing your coil at when you got it to levitate, that little neodymium disc?
1,000 hertz.
1,000 hertz.
Oh, which one, on the levitating video or the one with the disc that you just saw?
The disc that was underneath the coil and then it kind of swooped inside and just levitated on top. That was really cool.
Oh yeah, that's the one with the load, right? That I used the element on. I believe that was. I'd have to look at my notes, but I believe that one was 20,000 hertz.
20,000. Okay.
Yeah, 20K. That one.
Interesting.
Hey, Gerald.
Yeah.
One quick thing, last thing on that little coil, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see, because it's not a magnet, if it jumps off. Okay? If it jumps up from that next angle. And if you change the coil direction, would it matter? So we're looking at a coil wrapped this way, right?
Oh yeah.
What if it's wrapped, you know what I mean, like this?
So it's like a wheel in a wheel.
Yeah.
Like a gyroscope.
So would it get a longitudinal jump? You know what I mean? Would it shoot straight up? I don't know how to build that exactly, but I'm just.
I do. It takes a while though. The reason why I never built a coil like that, like I tried at one point. I'm sorry, Bogrish, your name is Ian? I apologize. Ian? Okay. So Ian's kind of doing the same thing that I did at one point. You wind your coil and then you reverse the winding. And what I was trying to build was like a hourglass figure and then a circle that goes around it. So it's like a sphere with an hourglass in the middle. It's very difficult because the form you have to build to wrap it, it's insane.
Right.
So
the hourglass is the indent for the toroid.
Yeah, well, on the inside.
The negative image. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I can make that, but I'll try.
So hold on. If you do an hourglass, you would basically have to have, as it goes up, the hooks would have to go out, and then the other one would have to loop into it. You know what I mean? Like you're sewing in order to bring it around. That'd be the only way to get the two to combine, because one wire for that whole thing would be insane.
Yeah, I get what you're saying by that. That's kind of like in one of my videos, you'll see I take a ferrite core. It's broken in half, and it's got 100 wraps on one side and 100 on the other. And I clamp it over a smaller toroid. And then one coil has a diode and a capacitor, and the other one, goes to an LED. Like not just a small one, like a whole bank of them. And sorry?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, it's all good. And then that very clamp, like I can pull energy out of that all day and it doesn't affect the watt meter whatsoever. So, but I've never tried pulsing the two like you're saying. So that's interesting.
And I was also thinking,
you got me thinking.
Nathan also got me thinking, do you think we can 3D print like a frame for like the hourglass shape for the coil? Like maybe like a sliding disc frame like we see with the PoE vortex coil?
To build an hourglass coil or to build my coil like
to easily wrap the coil in an hourglass shape instead of a torus shape like we see with the PoE coil you want wrap it in an hourglass shape. Yeah, like a frame to make it evenly spaced
It has to be
easier
a
to
triple.
wind.
It has to be a triple frame. You'd have to have a plate up above. You'd have to have a plate down below, and then you'd have to have a plate in the middle with a hole that you can wind your copper through, and your number sequence wouldn't go in a circle. Say you go 1, 3, 5, 7. It would go 1 through the hole to 3, through the hole to 5, through the hole to 7, and it would be consistently like that. So your pinch would be like a kind of like a hard twist, but at the same time, all the upper part would come out and it would form a geometrical form up above, and it would form a geometrical form below. But your copper on the inside of that hole on your center plate would be like a compressed twist. I built one half done prior, and I chucked it because I didn't have patience to finish it.
Well, what was your method for building it? Did you have like a frame, or did you wind it around something?
What I did is I had 3 pieces of I think it was 1/4-inch plywood, and then I had the form on the top, but I had a big hole that was right around where I had the nails put in, and then I had a middle plate with a smaller hole, and then I had a bottom plate with the nails, but it also had a big hole in it. So I was and to hold it all together, I was using threaded bolts with nuts that held each plate in place. So it was kind of like a scaffolding, right? So it looked like this big 3-plated, huge monstrosity. It was very difficult to wind, but it is possible. Yeah. I could build something similar to show you, but it might take me a couple days. just to build the form, right? So that
that sounds very complicated.
A little bit. It'd be easier for you to take a 1/4-inch or a 1/2-inch copper tubing. You know how it spirals? So you pull it apart, and then you would take bolts, and you would bolt bolts around it into a board, and then you would fit that copper tubing around that, and you would wind around the copper tubing. It would be a lot easier. In fact, I bring that up because that's the one I've almost completed. And that one's for, I'm going to attempt to heat water while pulsing the toroid coil, because the copper tubing is wrapped within the geometrical coil itself.
Oh, hold on. Ian's got something like that. Give me a second. I'll pull it up for you.
See, I was wondering if you had more coils than just that one.
Oh, he does.
Oh, I like this. Now you get me all happy. I love seeing geometrical coils. They're the best. I'm down.
So hold on. You're talking about the inner coil. So let's pull that up. So there's the inner.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I was going to cook my dinner on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a tune. That's a primary coil for there's a pancake bifilar coil underneath it, and I was using that just to keep it all flat. So it's for the graviflyer, basically trying to. I could be, completely in the wrong direction, but I'm trying to use the ZVS impulsing into it. Oh, question. Why? Let's see, where are they? Every time I remove the capacitors, both sides of it short out. And is that because I'm blowing something?
I'm not a ZVS guy yet.
I've never had it short out when I remove the capacitors. How are you removing them? Just soldering them out?
Just soldering them out, and they're nowhere near the components that I can't think why I'd be blowing the MOSFETs with the heat, but anyway, it's not just once; it's happened twice. So I cut everything out around it to make sure that there wasn't any shorting or anything going on. And this was a new one I got yesterday, and I took them out and it shorted immediately. Totally bizarre.
Did you run it without the new capacitor put in it?
Nope. There's no point, because I know it'll just go straight to 10 amps out of the power supply, and it'll do nothing. But I do have I have another smaller one which I've used it to tune the coil anyway. So until I
What's the
figure out what's going
capacitors
on
that
with that.
you're adding to it?
Oh, these. Well, that's tuning board I made. So it's a 6 kilovolt. So it between that yeah, just using a small ZVS board, and then that feeds into the capacitors, and then the capacitors go to the primary, to the tuning points on the primary. So, and basically, the ones with switches, when you go over like 1,000 or 2,000 volts, you start getting zapped with the switches. So these are just like hard points that I just basically put in the put in a wire joiners in between
Oh,
and
yeah.
then just screw them down basically. So, but it works fine. It was so I
But
mean that coil, I mean it was tuned
that's
at I think it was 71.6 nanofarads basically it was
so is
to
that
get
coming
there.
out of the ZVS right there? That those units are before the ZVS, right?
No, that's to replace the capacitors that were on the ZVS. I got rid of those on that one just
Okay,
as a
okay.
stopgap, and then that's a tuning capacitor bank, so I can get to the exact best tuning for the coil pair,
That's
just to
probably what's
make it
doing it
work.
because we're just using two capacitors, right? At 0.150 nanofarads. So together in series, we're getting 0.075 nanofarads in the capacitance, but it's not variable. So it's a direct shot. So it doesn't have any feedback. My thought is with that variable, you may have feedback. And as soon as you get feedback on the ZVS where it's not protected, it blows it.
Yeah.
Right, but it's not. It's. I never actually was able to do anything with this. I haven't even tried it. I just know that the posts are shorting out, so it's not going to work. And that's just from removing the capacitors that were on it. I haven't even connected it to the coils or anything. So
I
the
wonder if
capacitor, the tuning bank is basically, uh, I mean, they're polypropylene, so they're fast switching and all the rest of it. And then the more capacitors you have to do the same thing, the ESR goes down as well, so you get a better flow through it as well. So,
did you short
but only the ones that are actually connected are actually active in it.
did you short the capacitors before you unsoldered them? Because I wonder if they tested it at the factory and it had a charge. So when you went to unsolder it, it shorted them out.
Ah, quite possibly. But have you ever had to do that, Nathan, with yours?
I didn't have any problems with mine. I put a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, in between the capacitor and the board, and I hit the solder on the back and pop each side one at a time. I never put it on a flat plate or anything like that, a hot plate. I can have Sean get with you this, right here. Sean, absolute expert on this. Walk me through everything. Trust me. So he'll
Yeah.
explain it. Yeah, because that way we can stop blowing these things up and get you on to the next level. So I'll put you in direct contact with Sean, and I'm sure he'll
Oh,
help you
yeah,
out.
that'd be great for sure.
Yeah. He's got
Yeah.
some awesome
Yeah, no,
Tesla coil stuff. Sorry, go ahead, Don.
yeah. No, I was just going to show. I literally just wind these just to go above and below. I don't know. I mean, in the gravel flyer, I mean, again, I'm just trying to work with the same principles that are already out there. But I was trying to using Evo circuits where I can actually impulse these coils. And I went down a very long conversation with ChatGPT about the coil winding directions, the field directions, and just to get everything congruent going through from top to bottom. And even the orientation of the magnet bowls I was using. It's like those primer bowls. I made a few of those north and south.
Oh yeah.
But basically, there was with the ribbon coils I used, there was too much interaction between the coils. They were feeding into each other all over the place. But that's because I was using a different pulsing. I wasn't using a ZVS. but that's why I wanted to make this center coil here, which is the pancake. But basically, I had to use neodymium magnets to hold it together, the former together, to stop it from doing too many multiple winds on each surface. But I'd actually, interestingly enough, I don't know, Sean might be able to answer this. When I had the neo magnets on it, holding it the former together, the resonant. I was waiting for the epoxy to dry, and I thought I'd do some measurements on it. The coil came out at, I think it was 290 kilohertz as its resonant frequency, and when I took the magnets off, it dropped to 190. So that was kind of weird. So I guess the magnetic fields were interacting with it in such a way that it was. You'd think it would have sent it the other direction, but it it reduced it by a third, and that was kind of weird.
Slowed the field down, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, it slowed down. It made it as if it was a bigger coil. Basically, it was slowing down the resonant frequency.
That makes sense.
It's, yeah, but yeah. No, I've tried a few things. I mean, this one I made just because it looked like it should be something of great beauty.
The PO.
It has a nested coil inside it, which is, I mean, it's a rodent coil, but it's the first and third order. I made a smaller one of. I got a.
Oh, can you show that at an angle because we can't see the coil in the center of it? Oh, there you go.
Oh, well, you can see this one. You see the one that's there. Yeah, so it's
That's a big rodent.
Also, did you get that frame design from Alchemical Science?
No, I did it before him, and it was there was a guy on what's that website that has all the. Anyway, it was Tom. Well, that was 11 years ago, I think, but I found it about in 2019. I think I built this, and that was the first coil I made. So
maybe Tom
this
Barnett.
one I made as a Tom Barnett. That's it. Yeah, it was Tom Barnett. His entire kind of take on the whole Mod 9 and the whole sequencing was.
That's a beautiful coil.
Somebody actually somebody designed all the formers that you could make to make that coil, and that was I think why I bought the first 3D printer was because of that. So,
but how difficult was that to wind that nested coil? Did you have to wind the outer coil first and then the nested, or vice versa? No, the bigger one.
Yeah, you've got the bigger one. Well, they're both the same principle. So I put some other coils of just heavy number 8 gauge inside both of them, orthogonally to them, just to see if I don't even know why I did that at the time. It just seemed like a good idea. And now I'd be able to impulse those as primaries and see how they would behave with the.
Have you noticed any over unity effects?
Well, hello.
No, hey.
Loving your coils,
Bernie. How you doing?
Loving all the coils.
Yeah, the coils are beautiful. Yeah, I love them.
Well, this one has the most amplification just from its own resonance. You know, when I put them in series from the outer to the inner, it's like 5 megahertz or something like that, but it's or less. I can't remember. I wrote it down, but it goes from a 12 volt input. It'll be up at 300 volts at its resonant frequency as well. So
while maintaining the amperage.
Nice.
Well, it's just purely the signal generator going into it, so it's resonating at its self-resonant point, but it raises. I mean, it just jumps. I mean, it goes way up on it. So
that's interesting because I noticed the same kind of effect in my vortex coil. I've got a PoE vortex coil with the interference pattern similar to that one, only with the interference pattern, and we got it to double the voltage while maintaining the current on the output side, which is, pretty extraordinary, but it's not, that extraordinary when you look into the research of these coils. That's what they're supposed to do,
Sure. Yeah. You know, I've only done voltage impulsing, and I'd like to get into doing proper current impulses, and then to see, because that's I mean, with Evo's last video on this, I mean, uh, he's helped me immeasurably in everything with the circuits and everything. I'll take my hat off to the guy; he's brilliant, and so he's, you know. We're talking about what Tesla's radiant energy really is. It's basically that's a current. It's based on rapid discharge of capacitors, basically. He
Impulse.
also
Yeah.
said that the CVS cannot produce current impulses, and he's usually right, but I don't understand that at the minute. I'm not quite sure.
So, are you
You know?
familiar with the work of First Stop Energies at all?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I had a good look at it before, and I made these instead of the POEs, simply because they'd obviously been around for a while. And there was
Well,
one
the
video
reason
that
why
I've
I'm
never been
asking
able
is,
to find again.
oh,
There's one video they
yeah,
did that I've not been able to find, and that was
they
they
got a
were
lot
All
putting,
posted
of
on.
their videos have been taken down. They're like impossible to
yeah,
get a
that's
hold of.
yeah. But there was a great one, and it was all to do with he was inputting that tonal frequency into it, and it was quadrupling in intensity
Mm.
you depending on which, and I do have in the notebook. I actually took notes on it because I was interested because it was to do with acoustics basically rather than anything else, and it was very responsive to that as well. But I've got them somewhere. I haven't been able to find them recently though. But yeah,
The reason why I bring it up though is I wanted to ask you if you're using or if you've ever used or intended to use the Nunez method, the open circuit method that they employ in some of their designs. Are you familiar with the open circuit method that they use?
no, I didn't.
Yeah,
I
I'll
I,
show it
I
to you
kind
real
of
quick.
I
Again,
looked at it. Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, once I saw Gerald's coil, I thought that's the way to go.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
want to teach everybody, so I'm glad you're interested. That's awesome. But
Oh,
definitely,
totally. Yeah. No,
you're
very
definitely
much so.
going to have to be in on that class that we teach. So what's
Oh,
venue?
I'll be there for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so 18 kilohertz. See, okay, and what sort of results did they get with this?
So they claim that with this open circuit method, it maximizes the resonance within these vortex coils, and they're able to 10 times the voltage output while maintaining or slightly increasing the current. I've actually
Oh,
seen a
wow.
spike of energy at some of these higher frequencies. I can't actually use the higher frequency ranges with the setup I have. I'm kind of limited, but because I'm using a stereo amp receiver, basically to input the power and the tone. But
Right.
yeah, no, it's an interesting method, and not a lot of people are aware of it. So I tried to reverse engineer what they were doing because a lot of stuff got taken down, and I put a guide up, a do-it-yourself guide, if you're interested in the open circuit method and learning more about it.
Right. No, for sure. Yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah, because I remembered Marco Rodin, as colorful a character as he is, he did that. He had what was that? What was that guy's name? Guy always wears the hat. Anyway, he basically did a reverse engineering project for Marco based on a video
Oh,
that
Randy
they had, a
Powell.
live presentation of stuff. What was that?
Randy
You know
Powell.
the one?
He was the one who, yeah, he was the
Yeah,
one who
Randy
originally
Powell.
transcribed VBM on and put it, mapped it onto the Torrid for practical uses. And his work is actually what we're seeing a lot of in these coils, or remnants of his
Right.
work.
Yeah, Randy Powell
Right.
followed Marco Rodin for quite a while after Marco Rodin kind of
Yeah.
fell away from
All
the
right.
line.
No, but this was a different video, and it was a presentation, like a live presentation with this guy who was in Germany or something, who had wired the coil in a specific way and using a bass amplifier, but I didn't really know enough about it to understand it properly at the time. But he was using a bunch of high voltage capacitors, and he was creating what seemed to be a lot more coming out than was going in, to the point where Marco Rodin actually asked, it's the guy who makes the model airplanes and stuff now. He has this kid called Charlie. I wish I could remember his name. Anyway, But he did a lot of work in reverse engineering that, but he could not find a way that it worked. And the thing, so that all kind of went away. But it was a similar, but it was more on this design of coil, that the continuous spiral, rather than the cross weave that the PoE coils are. But it's interesting. I mean, I've definitely,
So yeah, what I've seen with
I keep getting distracted down rabbit holes, and then I don't quite finish this one, and then I'll move on to this, or I don't experiment enough with this one, and then I think, ooh, that looks really interesting. I think I'll go there. But that's what I've done with your coil, Gerald. It's like I'm really fascinated by it because it's great. I mean, the fact that you've got that geometry and the rhythm all built into the coil is just awesome. Really good. Yeah.
Yeah. It
So
uses
First Stop Energy was actually using the coil that you use without the interference pattern, the design without the interference pattern, to drive rotaries more efficiently. And they were doing testing with that versus the interference pattern. They found that was the more efficient one to generate the magnetic field to drive the magnetic rotary. And I have videos on my channel of clips that I found on. You can actually go on their Instagram. The Instagram is the one thing that they have left. A lot of video clips of their experiments and stuff is still up there, where they're driving a bunch of different rotaries with different sizes of these coils, and it's really impressive.
All right. Do you mean I have to join Instagram?
Oh no! I honestly, I feel you on that, but no, you don't have to join just to look at their videos. You can just go to
Oh, okay.
First Stop
Okay. Good.
Energies Instagram, yeah, and you can see a lot
Oh,
of.
right. Okay. So they're still around then. Well, that's good. Okay. Yeah. No, I
What?
will do for sure.
One Stop
Yeah.
Energies. That's the Nunez couple, correct?
The Nunez,
Yeah.
yes, the
Yeah.
couple, we don't know what happened to them. They stopped communications late in 2022, early 2023. So they kind of dropped off of all their social media platforms went silent. So, but in terms of the information that's still left, their YouTube videos got pulled down. They had hundreds, but you can go to Instagram and find some of the remnants of that. And I did actually, in the do-it-yourself guide, I did manage to pull some of the screenshots of their website, which they had a forum link to in their website that the link was disconnected. But I found a connection to it while doing a Google search. Sometimes it brings up different pages from the website. And so I don't know how I found it, but I found it, and it had like a whole bunch of descriptions of all the videos that were taken down off YouTube. So I managed to grab all that, and I have that documented as well.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah, I heard whispers of they got snatched up by a private company, but again, just whispers. Take it with a big truck of salt. So who knows? Like you said, they just sort of.
I have no doubt that somebody wanted to use them for some kind of project or another. So